So I'm Angelina Hong. I'm actually also part of the marketing team and Asian Hustle Network. But on my own business, I run a photography and social media marketing business, and I'm based in San Francisco. I particularly love helping the women of color entrepreneurs. So I love working with Michelle, and I love working with other folks who are like myself. And I want to also thank our sponsor for the event, GenPrex, and then also thank Michelle Tam of Nom Nom Paleo for offering her time today. Michelle, do you want to give a quick intro of yourself?
I'm Michelle Tam, born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, child of immigrant parents from Hong Kong and Guangzhou, China. I used to deal drugs in the middle of the night as a night pharmacist at Stanford Hospital. And then while I was doing that, I had a side hustle where I created Nom Nom Paleo, which is a food blog that is all about paleo eating. And eventually my side hustle became my main hustle.
Awesome. We'll definitely be talking a lot about that today, like the transition from the side hustle to the main hustle. So I'll just go quickly into what people can expect for the next hour or so. So for the first like 30-ish minutes, we'll probably be talking a little bit about the questions that we came up with for Michelle to answer, just to give you all some more background on who she is. Throughout the event today, if you have questions that pop up that you'd really like us to ask for her, feel free to put it in the Zoom Q&A or in the Facebook Live. We're going to try to populate it here as well. So don't forget to submit your questions. We'll be doing the giveaway announcement towards the middle of the AMA, and then we're just going to finish up with the Q&A until right around 1:55 p.m. and then we're going to do closing remarks and wrap up. So really excited to have you all here. So let's just get started. So Michelle, can you tell us a little bit more about your journey beginning as a night pharmacist to now being an award-winning cookbook author and food blogger?
Well, this was not planned at all. I actually thought I was going to be dealing drugs for the rest of my life, and I still have my pharmacy license. I graduated from pharmacy school in 2000, and right afterwards, I did a residency at Stanford. It was a joint residency with Stanford and a drug company. And after doing that residency, I was like, oh, I think I want to work at the hospital. So I took on a job at Stanford as one of the ICU pharmacists, but my schedule was so crazy. I think you would only know maybe 2 weeks before for the next month ahead, like when you would be working, and you could work days or evenings, or if you're a newbie, you'd have to rotate through the night shift. So I'd never know what my schedule was. And it was really frustrating because I was a total foodie and I loved going out to eat, but I couldn't make reservations because I never knew what my schedule was. And so when the night pharmacist position came up, the person who was leaving the position was like, you know what, this might be a really good opportunity for you, Michelle, because I know how much you like to go out and eat and see your friends. The pay's a little better, the hours suck, but this way, you can kind of plan your life and you know what your schedule is forever. Like no matter what, you work 7 nights on and have 7 nights off, and it's just the same. And so you can predict what your schedule is into like 2030. And I was like, oh, awesome. Like, this is perfect. I want to try this night shift, not knowing there's a reason why there's a night differential in pay, because working nights is really, really bad for your body. And that's why it's actually considered a carcinogen by the World Health Organization for, working nights. But while I was working nights, I had 2 kids, and I think at around 2010, so I'd been working nights for 8 years by now. We had our kids, but my husband and I were out of shape. We're like, oh, let's try to get in shape. And so he picked up these DVDs and he started exercising. And then he discovered something called paleo, or a way of eating called paleo. And he told me about it. And I was like, what does that even mean? Like, you just eat like meat and vegetables and you don't eat as many grains. And I was like, that sounds bogus. Like, I'm the one that has nutrition and food science, background from college. And I think you're supposed to just eat whole grains, no fat, no meat, And so he did it, and he felt really great. And immediately he got a 6-pack, and then he started doing CrossFit. And I was just like, maybe there's something to this, but he didn't try to convince me to go paleo at all. And in fact, I think he knew that if he pushed me, I would not want to do it at all. And so then I think I just kind of jumped in because that's kind of how I am. Like I just dive in, and then I started paleo, and then I started blogging about it, thinking no one would ever read it. And it literally was a Tumblr blog, and it was a Tumblr blog up until just maybe 3 years ago because it was free. And as like a child of immigrants, I was like, let's just do it the easiest, cheapest way possible. And so I started blogging, and I didn't think anyone was reading, so I would swear all the time on my blog. But then it just started getting more popular, and I used to just cook other people's recipes and kind of paleofy stuff. But then I realized like you can't do that. You have to actually create your own recipes. And so then I started, creating my own recipes, and one thing kind of led to another. And this was all while I was working nights. Until finally I was like, I can't juggle all the things. And so now this is what I do. That was really long-winded.
No, not long-winded at all. Yes, 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 yes. Totally. I mean, I think a lot of viewers here might be able to relate of like going from full-time to maybe going into their like side hustle. Maybe people are still there right now. So I'd love to dive into that a little bit deeper. For you, how is it balancing being a mom, night pharmacist, and also a food blogger?
That was really hard when I was balancing all those things, because what you realize is something has to give. Like, I think people are always like, oh, you can have it all. And it's not totally true. Like, I work nights, and so I had that week off every other week. But that week off that I had, I was like jet lagged. And so I had to start work again. But at the same time, because I had started paleo and I was doing CrossFit, like I felt so much better than I used to feel. So that almost kind of propped me up. And my parents and Henry's parents also helped watch the kids, like when I was working nights. Like they would watch the kids during the day while I was trying to sleep. So it wasn't like I was like taking care of the kids and then going to work and never sleeping. So we had help, but it did get busier and busier. And by the time like our first cookbook came out in December 2013, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I can totally do book tour because I have a week off every other week. Like I'll work and then I'll tour on my week off. And then I was just like, this is really hard. Like, I can't do it. But it was also that thing where I was like, I don't want to give up like my 401k and health insurance and just the stability of the job. But then when I really thought about it, I was like, this is not thriving if I don't kind of just jump head in. And I can't, like, at the time when I decided to quit my job, I was like, I'm not giving 100% to anything. And so I have to kind of choose a lane and go for it.
Yeah, that's actually a really good segue into my next question, because I think a lot of people are probably curious, and to even hear, that when you published your first cookbook, you were still working, your full-time job. So
yeah.
When did you know that you had to leave your night pharmacist job and go full-time on the entrepreneur journey?
So there were a few things with that. So our book came out in December 2013. I had been doing an on paleo plus night shift since 2010. So it'd been like almost like three and a half years by the time I was contemplating quitting. And so I think I decided I was going to quit in April of 2014, but I didn't actually quit until July, because if you work at the hospital, you have to give a lot of notice, especially if you're the night pharmacist, because there's really not that many people that want to fill your shoes. But I remember the one tipping point was we were nominated for our first Webby Award for our app. And they didn't send me the invitation, I think, until maybe a month before. And it was in New York City. And like, it just seemed like so much fun. And I was like, I really want to go to this, because I don't know if this, like, when will this opportunity ever come again that I can attend the Webby Awards? And like, there was a party that was DJ'd by Questlove and stuff. And I was like, wow, I really want to go. But they couldn't find anyone to work for me on the night shift. And I was like, I can't believe it. If I have to forego this opportunity and experience just because I have to work a shift at the hospital, like I'm not happy with that. But luckily, everyone at the hospital actually came together and like helped me like cover that shift. But even then, I was like, I'm sorry, guys, I'm gonna quit. But that was the tipping point.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Basically, when tipping point is when you like couldn't really engage in those like celebrations too, and being able to really give your all. I definitely feel that too as like an entrepreneur with like different, like with your divided attention, you really realize that, you know, things have to give. And so I also wanted to ask, and this has kind of been asked also in the Q&A, but what has helped you get to where you are today? And what advice would you have for others who want to set off in a similar direction?
So I think there's a lot of things that have helped us. Like, I mean, first of all, one of my biggest partners and cheerleaders is my husband. Like, people always think Nom Nom Paleo is just me, and it's not. Like, Henry does all the stuff people love about Nom Nom Paleo, like the design of the book, the branding, the cartoons, everything, like anything, photos, all the pretty stuff. Henry does. And he also helps out with the kids. He has a full-time job. Like, people think that he, you know, does this as his full-time job, but he has like a hard full-time job. And then he also does this in his time off. And then we have parents that were super helpful, especially when I was working nights, that would kind of chip in and work. But that's also why I decided to quit my job when I did, because they're like, okay, we're getting old. We don't want to babysit anymore. And, you know, I think you're doing okay. And I was like, okay, you're right. We have to reevaluate all that stuff. But I think a lot of it is growing up kind of the child of immigrants. Like, there's just kind of this work ethic that you learn. You know, I mean, there's good and bad about being children of Asian immigrants, as a lot of the people in the audience know, right? Like, there's all this pressure to kind of live up to what your parents' expectations are for you. But at the same time, you see how hard they work and how relentless they are to provide like the type of life they want for you.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Like how that mentality maybe either affected or like shifted the way you work, or even affected the decision to go full-time with Nom Nom Paleo?
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason why it took me so long to, like, it took me a long time to even, you know, do something out of the norm. Like, by the time I even started Nom Nom Paleo, I think I was like 35. And now I'm like 46. And so I feel like I was perfectly happy being a pharmacist for a very long time, because my dad was really happy just working his job. Like, he worked his way up from being like a technician at a factory to he went to night school and he became an engineer. But then he got a job where he literally would leave the house at like 7:30 and be home at 4:30. And it was like this schedule, and he was super content. And I actually used to tell people, I just want to be a cog in a wheel, just like that. I want to have like a job that helps pay my mortgage, but I like just having this super steady thing. And so I was really worried of kind of leaving that. But then, you know, thinking about everything now that I'm older, like, I realize now that my dad and my mom and my grandparents were like huge risk takers. Like, they left everything, you know, to come to another country. And so for him, that stability was something he was striving for, because he kind of built himself up from nothing. But I think what he wants for me and my sister, like, even though he said he wants something stable for us, is that he wanted us to also take risks and find something that you're passionate about. And of course, they don't want you to fail. So they want you to kind of just go for the professional degree or the job that is super stable. But I think even though I was really afraid to kind of quit, like my parents, I think, are very happy that I did.
Yeah, that's great. I think having that support system really helps when you're making those big decisions. Um, and so somebody asks, Frankie Gaw actually asks, which I think um, is relevant to what we're talking about right now too. What were some key decisions maybe you can remember, maybe early on in the mid-career that you made that were pivotal to the growth of your business? Anything in specific?
So I think that's a good question. I mean, I think one of the things, because I did this, I kind of started non paleo like in my 30s, and I already had kind of this stable job. I never had to do kind of like a money grab for anything. Like I actually was able to, and like Henry and I made a really conscious choice about this. Like I wasn't just gonna do a bunch of sponsored stuff that I didn't believe in. Like our first product that we put out was actually our app. And a lot of people are like, why don't you just do like an ebook or something? It's free, you'll make a ton of money. But we're like, I don't know. I think this app thing is really cool. So we were able to really do things that we really loved and wanted to put out there. And like the app, even though app development is super expensive and neither of us are developers or have any tech knowledge, like we were able to find like an app company that was like at kind of the beginning stages of building their business. And so they partnered with us and they helped us create like a really amazing app at like kind of a fraction of what it should cost. But I think it's kind of things like that. Like we would just say no. We say no to so many things. And I think people always think that I'm like sponsored by like Instant Pot or a whole bunch of stuff that I talk about, but I buy those things myself. And, you know, just having my audience trust me, like I don't ever want to lose my audience's trust. And so that is kind of the thing. But again, like I had the luxury and the privilege of being able to do that because I had a job and it was kind of this fun hobby that you know, if this was my sole way of making money, like I have no issues with my friends who do sponsor things or other things like that. But I think that's something that made us different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I know working on the back end with you, seeing all that, it's like absolutely true. And I think it does build a lot of trust. And I know that that's like a huge crux of your brand is like, it's really about you and your like honest and true God opinion. And I think that's a lot of the reasons why people follow you.
And what's funny is when we started, it was like anonymous because like we didn't have my picture or anything. And Henry had his little fitness blog and he never put his name. But I think eventually, I think I even took like a writing class and my teacher was like, well, unless you actually are a person, like no one's going to be able to connect with you. And when you're kind of hidden behind this kind of anonymous persona, you can say whatever you want and you can be super brave or like a jerk or whatever, but that's not your true you. Like if you have to be who you are, like you have to, you know, own your opinions, apologize, be humble, like all those things. And there's definitely times when I'm like, oh, I did something wrong. I have, you know, I'm sorry. You know, that's just how it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, you mentioning the app actually, I think also brings us into this question that somebody asked on the Zoom. So people who are on the Zoom or on the Facebook Lives, like if you want to ask some questions, feel free to ask in the comments and we'll try our best to answer them. So another question from Frankie, which I think is going to be really good for people who are more like business oriented and business minded and really want to learn about how you built your business. Talking about your different income streams and maybe which ones like you've prioritized and for what reason.
So I think it's really important to have lots of different streams and not depend on one to bring in like 85 or 90% of your income. I think there's a lot of different ways that a blogger can make money. For us, I think our biggest moneymaker was cookbooks. And I know a lot of people who authors are like, what? That is, you don't make money with cookbooks. But we actually negotiated with our publisher we have a NDA, so I can't talk about exactly how we negotiated, but our cookbooks make us a good amount of money, and we have 100% creative control, which is great. So we make money through our cookbooks. We also make money through our app. Not a ton of money, but it's like a nice kind of passive income through the app. And we actually made a conscious decision not to have like I think we tried initially with our app to be kind of the premium model where it was like a small price and then you could pay extra to add extra recipes. But then we decided, no, we're just going to do a one-time $5.99, and then we'll just keep on updating it with recipes for free for people, just because, you know, I mean, I don't think that's the best business decision, but I always think of what I would want as a consumer, and I was like, hey, I would like that. I don't want to keep on paying for this stuff. And then we have some ads on our blog, which I actually didn't even know about until a couple of years ago, but that's also a good source of income. Affiliates with like Amazon affiliates, and then some, like, I don't actually have a bunch of affiliates, but I think if you find businesses that you love and you are happy about promoting, then you know, an affiliate link is a great way to make money without kind of feeling weird about it, because nobody's paying extra. They're paying however much they would pay to buy that thing, but you get like a small percentage of it. What other things? There is some sponsored stuff, but very rare because I rarely ever do sponsored stuff. So I think it's like cookbook, app, and advertising are probably the main ways.
What about like your partnerships with like Whole Foods and things like that?
I don't do very many of those. Oh yeah, so the spice blends, that's another one. So we get a small licensing thing from the spices, but it all kind of adds up. But like Whole Foods is, you know, they partner, but it's also, I don't think it pays as much as people think it does. But it's really great marketing, right? Because it, like, you know that if Whole Foods is partnering with you, that also gives you cachet, right? That, wow, Whole Foods would partner with me. And so we always thought of our whole like foods partnerships as like a really great marketing opportunity for us. And we love Whole Foods. It was a place that we shopped all the time and continue to shop at. And it has a lot of the values that that we share. But in terms of like actual money, like, again, it's probably me because I don't have like an agent or a manager or anybody who negotiates stuff. And so that's why I like being in control of my own things, because then I'm not kind of like, I don't know how much people charge for sponsored posts or, you know, that kind of stuff. You know, and so sometimes I'm like, shoot, I must have pitched them too low because they didn't counter at all, you know. So but the things that I mentioned that make money, those are kind of concrete things, and those are things that we're kind of in control of.
Yeah. And this also segues me into another conversation that somebody asked from Facebook. Connie Chung asks, what was your vision for Nom Nom Paleo when you started? Did you imagine it to be what it is now? And what surprised you most about its evolution?
So when I started it, I literally thought it was just my personal food journal. Like, because when I started paleo, I didn't really know what you were supposed to eat when you went paleo. I mean, there were a few food blogs at the time, but it wasn't my specific flavor of paleo because I was like a huge foodie. And so I wanted to taste good. And so I just started originally on Tumblr, just kind of writing like ways I would paleofy recipes or what I would pack to take to the hospital as my meals. And then I started posting like paleofied versions of recipes in like all my cookbooks. But then it's just slowly morphed into creating my own recipes. And now and when I started, I literally was blogging several times a day. Like, right now I'm having breakfast, you know, right now I'm having lunch. If you go back to my archives, it's terrible and the pictures are terrible. And so it's just kind of evolved now into being kind of an evergreen paleo recipe site. But there are certain things that I think have been kind of consistent through the whole journey. Like it is very focused on our family. And at first it wasn't. It used to just be me talking about what I was eating. But then people would see pictures of my kids in the background. They're like, what do you feed your kids? Are your kids paleo? And I'm like, this is all about me. Stop asking about my kids. But really, it was because I felt really guilty because I was like, yeah, how come my kids are paleo? And why don't I eat their leftovers? Like, why is it okay for them, but I won't eat it myself? Um, and so that's when it kind of pivoted to be more kind of family friendly, and I cut out the swearing. And then Henry was like, wow, a lot of people are looking at your blog. Why don't you make the pictures look better? And I'd be like, I don't know how to do that. If you want to do that, you can come on board. So I think in 2012 is when Henry kind of jumped on to help with all of the graphics and visuals. And when we were at UC Berkeley, he used to be a cartoonist for the school newspaper. And so he's always been a cartoonist, and he's always kind of drawn some sort of cartoon version of me. And so when we were thinking of our app, we're like, it would be really fun if we had like a cartoon Michelle, you know, or I think initially we came up with some t-shirts like on Spreadshirt. And so he came up with all these little cartoony things, and that kind of has just kind of continued. And we now totally lean into the whole cartoon family kind of feel of it. Like our latest cookbook is like step by step, almost kind of like comic book panels. And we did that actually because number one, it makes it easy for people to follow, and you can see step by step if you know, you're kind of cooking things the right way. But really, we wanted it to appeal to kids, and to have kids excited about eating like kind of whole foods and cooking at home. And so we get a lot of like letters from like little kids, and we're like, yes, like it worked. So hopefully that answered.
Yeah.
That was all.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait,
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
the winner. They're the winner of the giveaway.
I was gonna ask. Okay. So we do have a winner for the giveaway. So Michelle, do you want to show the prizes again? So it's gonna be a signed,
You guys will
ready or
get
not
all brand new
book.
versions of this. So that maybe with an action figure. I don't know if you
Yeah,
can
an
see.
action
And
figure,
then there's socks.
socks,
And non-paper socks.
stickers,
Stickers.
and then a signed Ready or Not cookbook, which is her second cookbook, which I use all the time. Her recipes are awesome. I like honestly like exclusively cook your recipes now, Michelle. I don't know if you know that, but
I didn't know that. That actually makes me really happy. So we are
yeah,
working on cookbook number 3, but it is slow going because we work on it by ourselves. And Angelina knows because she's been helping behind the scenes, which actually makes it the stretch from 2 to 3 people makes it a lot better. So thank you, Angelina.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. So we have the winner for all of those amazing things. It is Lynn Diaz. I'll go ahead and type it in the Zoom chat as
Yay,
well.
Lynn.
I'll see.
And once we get your mailing address and how you want it personalized, I will package this up and send it through the mail.
Yes. So Lynn, I feel like if you could actually just message the panelists, you can go into the chat in the Zoom and message us, and then we'll just get your contact information and be in touch so you can get everything. So cool. Yay, we have a winner. Congrats, Lynn. That's awesome. Cool. So we'll just continue on with the Q&A. I think we should still continue talking about your family for just a little bit longer before we like jump back into like the businessy stuff, because I think your family is a huge part of you and then also of your business now too. Do you want to talk a little bit more about like how you've incorporated your kids into your business and into the paleo lifestyle?
Okay, so I'm gonna say it because people always ask, like, is your family completely paleo? And the answer is no. Like, I'm not even completely paleo. Like, I am, all the stuff I create is paleo, and I eat 100% gluten free. But I also am very like transparent. Like, whenever we're traveling, like I'll say this is what I ate, and clearly it's not paleo, but it's gluten free. But when I'm at home and I'm recipe testing, like everybody has to eat what I'm making, so we eat a lot of paleo / kind of Whole30 food at home. And at first, like when I mentioned before, like the kids were kind of in the periphery because they're just here all the time, and we're just shooting pictures literally in our house. And so people would see the kids, and so they're there and they're in the books. But now that they're older, they don't like to be in stuff as much. Like we used to do Facebook Lives, and Ollie would help out kind of in front of the camera, and then Owen would help out behind the camera. But now, like, they're kind of there, but if they, like, everything has to get their approval before I put anything out there. But, you know, we kind of just live our life, and they happen to kind of be around, they're in it. But I think one of the important things is we definitely have them in the books because we want people, like, we want other kids to see, like, it's not weird to eat, you know, home cooked meals, and you know, but at the same time, my kids aren't perfect. Like, they will eat junk all the time if, you know, I let them.
Yeah, as kids and honestly humans probably do.
Yeah.
Awesome. I see in the Q&A box that people are asking a little bit more about like your negotiations. So talking a little bit, if you can, about the process creating like your cookbook and maybe how you decided to do that on your own, like you and Henry, and not hiring an agent. Both the cookbook and maybe like your other partnerships as well.
Okay, so one thing I don't think I've mentioned is, so Henry is a lawyer.
Yes.
So luckily, I have like a negotiator as a partner. I mean, he's not a contracts negotiator, but he knows how to read legalese, and he knows how to negotiate stuff and contracts. And I think also, like, for the whole app thing, we just did that all ourselves. Like, we self-financed it, we figured out how to do it, we did, you know, all the research, and we just did it ourselves completely. And then our first book, actually, we were going to self-publish because we had a friend, Melissa Julwan, who did it herself. And she and her husband were like, you need to self-publish. Like, it is so much, like, if you've got the platform and you want 100% creative control, you don't need a publisher, you know, to do that. And so we were on our way just to self-publish. And then I think we were probably 80% done with our book. And then we were contacted by our current publisher, and she was like, I'm going to actually be in town. Why don't we meet for coffee? And I actually, like, even though I was like, I understand the money behind self-publishing and stuff, but I like the idea of being published by an actual author because, you know, I love cookbooks. And at the time, like back in 2012, 2013, it just wasn't as respected to be self-published. Like, I think now it's a little different. And so when we met with her, Henry was like, you need to say no. This is like when we were at the timeshare. You cannot cave. You just have to say no, stick to your guns. So I said, okay. So we went and had coffee with our publisher, and we were like, nope, this is what we want to do. And she was like, well, why don't we talk about things? And so we came up with a mutually beneficial negotiation. And then in terms of like negotiating with other, like, I mean, part of why I don't do sponsorships is because I don't know how to negotiate. I don't know what is, I mean, I've actually talked to some of my friends and said, hey, how much do you charge for this? But that's something that people don't like to talk about. Like, it's a weird thing, right? And then people get paid different amounts, as you've seen with like the whole Bon Appetit video stuff, you know? So that's also why I was like, I don't want to be dependent on those types, you know, that income stream, because I don't really have control over that. But yeah, but I know that I mean, I actually have been listening to a lot of podcasts on how to negotiate. And I was like, oh, you don't just accept the first thing they offer you. You have to counter, and you can't be afraid to counter, you know, like there's lots of things where, like, as someone who just doesn't like conflict and just always like, okay, yes, whatever, that sounds great, I'll take the first thing you offer me. Like, that's just stuff and it might also be a very female versus male thing, because Henry's like, yeah, of course you negotiate. Like, there's no question. And, you know, and I was like, really? Because I'm just happy they gave me an offer. And that's just not how it goes, apparently.
Yeah. I think that's a really good thing to bring up too, because I remember you telling me for the first time, and I feel like as like a female, like especially like Asian, you're just very docile and you're just like, okay, I'll accept
Yeah.
it because I feel honored for
Yeah.
this like offering. But it's
No, and
Henry
then
totally right.
apparently the offer they give you is always lower than they expect you to take. And I was like,
Right.
oh, I did not know. Like,
Yeah, big secret, everyone. I feel like that's a great takeaway.
yeah, that's a big takeaway.
Yeah. And Trang Pham also asked, on the vein of, talking about your cookbook, how did you find a publisher that you trust?
So we had been approached by a bunch of publishers before, but none of them were offering us what we wanted, because they always were like, this is how we want you to do it. Like, we want it to be like a he said, she said with you and Henry would do the fitness part, and then you do, workout, whatever. And I was like, that's not who we are, and that's not what I want to do. Or some other publisher was like, I want you to do paleo junk food. I was like, that's not me either. And so I think we just, or they would like, or we'd hear offers that our friends were getting, because there were a lot of paleo cookbooks. Like right now, keto is the big thing, but for a while, paleo was the big thing. And all these people we knew were getting paleo book deals. But then we had our friend, Melissa, who did her own thing and self-published. And she's like, no, look, this is the bottom line. You can make a lot more if you do it yourself. And so we were pretty committed to just doing it our own way, because we had already done our app. But then our publisher approached us, and I really I love our publisher. They created a bunch of cookbooks that I loved and I owned. And they also at the same time do a bunch of cartoons and graphic novels, like Calvin and Hobbes is Andrews McMeel. And so I just thought it was like a really good synergy. And I also like that they were not, I know this is weird, but I like that they weren't in New York, because that's where most of the publishing houses, and there are some here in San Francisco, like Chronicle and 10 Speed and stuff. But I like that they were in the middle of the Midwest, like in Kansas City. And when we flew out to meet them, I was like, I like this. I like this here. I think these people, I think they were just very straightforward. And we were able just to talk to them really honestly about what we could bring to the table. Because there were clearly things that, if you were to self-publish, yes, there are ways that you could do it. And you can hire a printer, and you can hire editors and, all the stuff, and indexers. But if you actually go with a publishing house, this is what they do. So they know, and they already have relationships with printers. So I think the big thing with that is don't underestimate your worth, which I think a lot of times Asians have a tendency to do, right? You always be humble, work hard, keep your head down, but you need to know your worth and know, hey, I actually have an audience that I could really rev up to buy this product, because I know what they want. And you just have to stick with your guns.
Yeah. And another question somebody asked, which I think flows really nicely from that, because you talked about, knowing your worth, knowing what your audience wants, so you have that leverage to be able to negotiate. Will asked, really, how did you grow your audience? And did you just organically grow it, or did you do any additional marketing? And what advice you might have for somebody who's starting out now who wants to start growing an audience?
That's a good question. So a lot of I think a lot of my audience growth has to do with luck, right? So there's luck because I discovered paleo right as it was kind of accelerating up. And that, I've never bought audiences. I've never paid for, followers or anything, but a lot of it is luck and just working really hard. I don't work as hard as I did when I first started. And sometimes I wonder how I had the energy to do all that, because I was working nights, I had kids, and I was doing this at the same time. But I feel like some of it is using kind of that whole, again, being children of immigrants. We know how to reach a goal. you know how to just keep on grinding and grinding and grinding. You know, it's like getting that A like in your class. You just do it, and you try. And I think another part is that you just try different things, and you aren't afraid to fail. Like one of the things when I was a kid is I would only kind of do things that I knew I was kind of naturally good at, and I would immediately quit things that were harder. But I think with this, like I would just try different things, like social media, like all of it is new. And so I try like Instagram or Facebook or, you know, blogging, like you just try different things and just see what works. But I think if you're fake and you're buying followers or it just looks too, like if you look at my Instagram, like it's not like if you look at other people's and you just look at kind of their if you just swipe through their Instagram, you'll see they have this pattern. Like they always have this certain filters, or they have like a certain type of post, a certain type of post, certain type of post. And so it's this pattern. But with mine, there isn't that. Like it literally is like, oh, this is what I made for dinner today, or this is kind of a fun thing. So I think you just need to just put yourself in the position of your reader or your consumer. Like what would you want to see? And so my whole thing is I always want to share things that are useful or delightful. And so if it's neither of those things, I try not to post it, because then it's just noise.
Yeah, yeah. So really just like being authentic and true to yourself and like trying new things, not being afraid of failure. I think that's really true for.
But it is also luck. It is also luck. Like I think,
yeah,
you know, starting, you know, a lot of people who have gained a big audience, it's because they started early. And it just so happened at that time. But I think if you work hard and you have good content and you network organically with people, I think that's another thing. Is I think people are like, how do I get to know other people? You just have to organically try to connect with people. And please never ever slide into someone's DMs or write them an email that says, hey, I'm in your hometown and I would like to buy you a coffee so I can pick your brain about how to be as successful as you are. Because that never works, number one. And that's like, it immediately kind of makes the person on the receiving end be like, like, please, like that is it's almost kind of like a very entitled request. Like, why don't you help me? Like, I'm not gonna, you know what I mean? But if you are organically like saying, hey, I really love this, and like how, you know, like, and engaging realistically, people will want to help you, and like, it'll happen. But you also can't be afraid to reach out, but also don't be a jerk about it. And don't be offended when they're like, what do you mean you're not gonna go out for a coffee with me? Like, because, you know, that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me personally, I feel like this is my advice that I've realized is like pick your brain as red flags, because it really just means like, how can I get free information from you, where you've like harvested your knowledge for years, and they're like, can I get it from you in like 30 minutes? And it's like, over coffee? Like, no.
And also things are really different, right? Like even I've told you exactly how I achieved what I achieved. It will not be the same for you because of timing, luck, like so many other factors.
Yeah, yeah, totally agreed. And somebody else asked, Yuri Kim asked, can you talk about who's part of your team, staff, freelancers, collaborators, etc.? And I'm going to expand on that and say, because I think for myself as like a solopreneur, at what point do you realize you're like, I need to expand my team? Like I need more people, especially when it's like your baby. Yeah.
Okay. So it is me with the recipe development, and then Henry for most of the photos and design. And then we also, Angelina here also helps us. Before the pandemic, she was helping us like shoot pictures and like all the Facebook management, because I am not really great at handling all the Facebook stuff. She handles all the Facebook stuff. She does a lot of kind of operation stuff. With the book stuff, she's also helping us with editing and organization, like stuff that I'm not good at. And then the only other so Angelina is actually like a part-time employee of ours. And that's the only person like on our payroll. But I also have a Pinterest VA that helps with Pinterest because I don't know how to do Pinterest. And then I have a bookkeeper, and those are recent things. And even Angelina, the scope of what she's been able to do is a lot more than what my last person did, because he was virtual and he just kind of helped with Facebook. But Angelina's been able to help us with a lot more just because she brings a lot more to, to us.
Awesome.
So
and then, yeah, at what point were you like, we need to go beyond just, you and Henry?
I think, let's see, I hired my first person back in 2015. So I think probably before the second cookbook, which was 2017. So 2016-ish, just because it's a lot of work and you can't really do everything on your own. And it was really hard for me to give up stuff. And for Henry too, because this is like our baby. But I think what we realized is there are other people who can do that a lot better and faster, and you can just pay them to do it. But it also, I think, kind of depends. Like there's certain things that I think we could do better and faster, but we also like to keep it in-house. But it depends on how you want to grow. Like I also have friends who have blogs where they have maybe like 10 part-time people on staff because they're also creating a lot of content and videos and all this other stuff. Whereas for us, it's like we create like a recipe a week for the blog, and then we're working on the cookbook. So that takes up a lot of our time. And Henry also still has his full-time job. So it's not like we're throwing ourselves 100% like I am, but Henry can't throw himself 100% into this. But it is, I think if you can get help and you can afford it, it really will help you and your business, because there are just certain things that I'm just not good at. And even if I took the time to try to learn it, it will never be as good as someone or this is their thing.
Right. Yeah. And like recognizing that too and being okay with it and not trying to learn everything by yourself. Because I think as like entrepreneurs like yourself and myself, it's like, let me just like learn everything and do it. And then you're just like, yeah good, or save that time for the things you're good at.
I think like getting a bookkeeper was the best thing I ever did. I literally got a bookkeeper last year. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's not where I spend like a whole weekend pulling out my hair before tax time and like trying to figure everything out. I mean, obviously other people are like, well, QuickBooks is so easy. It shouldn't be that hard anyway. But like, that's not a strength of mine.
Yeah, because there's still stuff you have to do with QuickBooks anyways. It's not just like this magical thing. Cool. I know we're coming up. It's about 1:50. We'll have another like 5 minutes to talk about maybe one or two other questions, and then we're going to go ahead and wrap up. So folks, if you want to try to get any last minute questions, we'll try to get to, two of them. And I guess let's go back to talking about your cookbook, since I know right now, you're working on your third one. If you want to talk about your third book at all, feel free. But also Charlene from Facebook is asking about the process of you creating those cookbooks, and maybe what was the hardest part for you about putting that together?
It's putting together our cookbooks can be pretty chaotic, as Angelina knows. Angelina's trying to help us streamline it for our third one. But we definitely normally come up with like a concept, and we brainstorm recipes, but then things like veer off. And so even though I might have a set list of recipes, I'm always like, oh, I really want to make this, or because the books, I always want to make them the best they can be. But then once they're published, it's like set in stone and you can't fix anything. And so that's why we're always trying. It's just very stressful. I don't know how else to explain it. And then like Henry does all of the design and all the layouts and all the cartoons and all that stuff. And so I was surprised that we were doing a third cookbook because I didn't want to attempt it unless like Henry was ready. And then he's like, let's work on a third cookbook. So that's kind of why. And we actually just heard back from our editor today about having to nail down exactly when we're going to deliver the book. But yeah, it's hard. It's a hard process, and it's hard no matter what. Writing cookbook is always hard, but I think if you are doing all the things, it's even harder. I mean, luckily our editor helps us with the editing. We have an indexer, and we have all these people at our publisher help us kind of edit our vision. But it's still hard because we do most of it.
Yeah, you guys do a lot of it, and I think the benefit obviously is that it's your vision and you get to do whatever you want to do, but then the con is obviously that the bulk of the work is on both of your shoulders. So I'll ask this last question and then we'll go ahead and wrap up. It's actually Frankie again. I thought this was a great way to kind of end our conversation together. Do you have any big dreams for Nom Nom Paleo or yourself for the next like 5 or 10 years?
That's an interesting question, because I never think ahead like that, ever. Like, people are like, did you ever see, like, where do you see yourself in 5 or 10 years? Like, I've never done that. And I don't even know. Like, I honestly, like, we literally, like, I think we try to put out the best product that we can now. And I don't think about what happens in the future, because, paleo might not be popular, and there's just so many unknowns. I mean, 2020 is a perfect example of, the world, kind of going crazy. And so I don't know where I see myself in 5 to 10 years. I mean, I don't know that I'll be doing this forever, but we will be doing it as long as we love it and we feel like we can offer something that people want.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle, for your advice, for your candid responses. I always enjoy talking with you. And thank you to all of our listeners, people who are tuning in to the Zoom and to the Facebook Live. I hope you all learned a little bit something today, and I'm sorry if we didn't get to your question. But Michelle, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
They can find me at nomnompaleo.com. I think every social media, I'm at Nom Nom Paleo, except for TikTok, because I didn't grab it. And I'm not really on TikTok anyway. But yeah, just at Nom Nom Paleo. And you can Google Nom Nom Paleo and you'll find me.
Awesome. I'm typing it into the chat so people know. I know you also have an app for the iOS, which somebody commented they already bought it. And I'm like, cool, it's awesome. I definitely use it a lot as well.
Oh, thank you.
And as we're wrapping up, I just want to say thank you again to our sponsor, Genprex. Their mission is to develop life-changing gene therapies for patients with cancer and diabetes through unique, innovative science, and to also our other partners, Ace Next Gen and Gold House, who helped us throughout the event to all their audiences as well. So that's pretty much it for today. Any last words from you, Michelle?
No, it's been a pleasure. The time went by really fast and I had a really great time. So thank you.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you too. So thank you to everybody who's tuning in. We're going to be signing off soon. So thank you.